Imagine if your government put a known toxin in your drinking water, one that had been linked to conditions like liver and brain disease and reduced IQ in children. Imagine if this was done without your consent and despite decades of public protest, all based on the premise that it's good for your teeth. Water fluoridation today affects more than 2/3 of American men, women, and children. And sure, you could make the case that the science behind the disease and the reduced IQ is incomplete and the evidence is questionable, but you can make the same case for the evidence of improved dental health. One thing that's undeniable, though, is that the primary forces behind the widespread acceptance of water fluoridation, the entities who have invested the greatest amount of time, money, and effort into the promotion of this mass medication program, don't give a damn about your teeth. The water fluoridation story starts in 1901, when a young dental school graduate named Frederick McKay moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado to start a practice. He quickly noticed that the residents of Colorado Springs seemed to share a common dental malady. Their teeth were discolored and sometimes disfigured, mottled with random brown spots and pits. Locals suggested numerous theories about the disorder: eating too much pork, consuming low-quality milk, or drinking water with too much calcium. McKay investigated the condition for years with little or no interest from the dental community. Finally, in 1909, McKay convinced the Colorado State Dental Association to invite a leading dental researcher, Dr. Green Vardaman Black, to come investigate. The two of them made a little progress before Black's death in 1915, learning two things: that children were most vulnerable to the condition, and that the mottled teeth were, for some unknown reason, unusually resistant to decay. McKay continued to believe it was related to the water supply, but had no evidence until 1923, when the mottling was seen again in Oakley, Idaho, after the town started piping in water from a warm spring nearby. McKay advised them to abandon the new water source altogether and use a different one. It worked. Within a few years, young children were getting new teeth with no signs of mottling. This confirmed McKay's suspicion that the brown stain was caused by something in the water, but he still had no idea what or why. That changed when McKay and Dr. Grover Kempf of the U.S. Public Health Service traveled to Bozite, Arkansas, a town owned by the Aluminum Company of America, also known as Alcoa, to investigate similar dental staining. Both Alcoa and the Public Health Service will come to play a major role in the eventual push for water fluoridation. With the help of Alcoa's chief chemist, H.V. Churchill, they ultimately concluded that the town's water contained high levels of fluoride. They determined conclusively that the fluoride seemed to be the source of the staining, a condition now known as fluorosis. In 1931, the Public Health Service began another series of tests to determine if there was an amount of fluoride that could be added to the water to provide the decay-resisting benefits without the brown staining, presumably due to the work McKay and Black did in Colorado. They were able to determine that fluoride levels of up to 1 part per million did not cause fluorosis in most people, and only minor fluorosis in others. This breakthrough led to the first large-scale test to determine if adding small amounts of fluoride to drinking water could help reduce dental caries. The test became a reality in 1944 when the City Commission of Grand Rapids, Michigan, voted to add fluoride to its public water supply. In 1945, the cities of Grand Rapids, Michigan, Newburgh, New York, and Brantford, Ontario began adding sodium fluoride to public water supplies. Subsequent studies showed a reduction in dental caries among children born after the water fluoridation began. Great news! But if it seems strange that these local governments would be so willing to conduct mass medication experiments on the public without being fully aware of the potential dangers, well, that's because a funny thing was happening at the same time as this dental health revolution unfolded.
3, 2, 1, 0.
It turns out fluoride was an essential chemical in atomic bomb production. Massive quantities of fluoride were used in the manufacture of bomb-grade uranium and plutonium in the U.S. nuclear weapons program. Some 50 years after the Manhattan Project, declassified documents reveal that the federal government faced a number of lawsuits from defense contractors over fluoride damage, and they required large-scale human tests to confirm that fluoride was in fact safe for people to help defend them from these lawsuits. In a classified program known as Program F, bomb program researchers, with the cooperation of state health department personnel, started in 1945 to secretly gather and analyze blood and tissue samples from Newburgh, New York citizens. These documents also reveal that evidence of adverse health effects from fluoride was censored by the Atomic Energy Commission for reasons of national security. So, to recap, when American municipalities began adding fluoride to the drinking water in 1945, under the pretense of improving dental health, the federal government was aware of the health risks posed by exposure to this dangerous cumulative neurotoxin. In fact, they used the opportunity to conduct a massive human experiment on unwitting participants to collect data that would help defend the government against lawsuits from the people it had poisoned. That's not to say that fluoride didn't provide any dental health benefits. It may have. It's just that there were additional health effects intentionally withheld from the public. And while the government had its own agenda, the real push for water fluoridation on a massive scale came from the private sector. That's because the sodium fluoride being used to fluoridate water was a byproduct of aluminum production, and virtually overnight it went from being a toxic industrial waste product that was difficult and costly to dispose of, to being a saleable product for profit. This was very good news for the nation's leading producer of aluminum, Alcoa. Water fluoridation was great for business. In fact, their chief legal counsel, Oscar Ewing, just happened to be in charge of the Public Health Service in 1950 when he used his position to legalize water fluoridation for the nation. And when the fluoridation movement met resistance in New York City, their primary target, Alcoa's legal team hired the infamous propagandist Edward Bernays to create a public relations campaign to sell the concept of water fluoridation to the public. Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, was a notorious spin doctor who had helped American meat sellers convince the public that bacon was a wholesome and healthy food, and helped tobacco companies convince American women to take up smoking as an act of feminist liberation. Bernays worked with Ewing to mold public perception in favor of water fluoridation. He had press releases issued to media outlets citing the health benefits of water fluoridation. He sent letters to dictionary and encyclopedia publishers, encouraging them to include the word fluoridation in their publications. It was at this time a group of concerned citizens was assembled as the Committee to Protect Our Children's Teeth. In 1956, the committee, with financial backing from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, published a booklet called Our Children's Teeth, promoting water fluoridation as a safe and healthy way to protect our children from cavities. This booklet was published along with 3 lists of names. One listed the members of the committee, one listed 229 people described as leading American authorities on nutrition, and another 121 people described as the nation's foremost chemists. Many of the names listed were employed by leading drug manufacturers and chemical companies, including several who were involved in the manufacture or use of fluoride-related chemicals, including 3 names from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory Atomic Energy Installation. A radiologist from Seattle, Dr. Frederick B. Exner, was a severe opponent of water fluoridation and the economic motives behind it. He personally wrote to each of the chemists listed in the book. In his own words, as recorded in his book, The American Fluoridation Experiment, I wrote each one and asked whether he had signed and whether he believed this statement true. Some denied signing. Some had signed without reading. Some had signed knowing the statement to be false, but because they thought fluoridation so desirable that any means were justified. Dr. Exner and others continued to fight, but the propaganda campaign engineered by Bernays and the Committee to Protect Our Children's Teeth was too powerful. Public opinion shifted enough that fluoridation finally passed in New York City in 1965. The tide had turned. And now, after all of these decades of additional research, most of which is disturbing, we still allow our drinking water to be intentionally polluted without the kind of scrutiny it deserved in the first place. Today, the aluminum industry and sodium fluoride are not as big a part of the water fluoridation story, because the majority of cities now fluoridate using a different substance, hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is instead a byproduct of fertilizer production. The profit motive is as strong as ever, as these companies used to pay an estimated $7,000 per ton to dispose of this hazardous waste, and could now sell it to cities like yours for a reported $1,500 per ton. considering the thousands of tons used each year, it adds up quickly. This also avoids all of those pesky lawsuits that would arise for polluting groundwater and poisoning nearby crops, livestock, and people. Oh, and another interesting fact about today's water fluoridation is that hydrofluorosilicic acid also contains trace amounts of lead, arsenic, and other known toxic and carcinogenic substances that are not really supposed to be added to our water, but just are. As you would expect, many people continue to dissent, and as you would expect, those people are mainly dismissed and marginalized as the official beat rolls on claiming fluoride is safe and studies that suggest otherwise are just wrong. I guess we should be grateful, though, if profit is the primary motive behind water fluoridation, because some of the other theories are truly horrifying. But you don't have to believe that water fluoridation is some nefarious plot hatched by a secret elite cabal of satanic globalists hoping to calcify our pineal glands as they subjugate our weak and docile minds. Without that, there are plenty of good reasons to think that maybe the majority of the world isn't wrong about this. Maybe we need to take another look.